Monstercat Skin Remakes Part 3. So far we've finished 8 genres, so in this video I'll remake the last 4 or 5 depending on how you count it, which are Future Bass, Trap, Indie Dance, New Disco, they're kinda related, and Electronic, which actually just means unclassified. So now in this video we're going to start off with Future Bass, which is a genre that didn't even really exist at the start of Monstercat, because Monstercat started in 2011 and Future Bass only really became popular like easily 3 or 4 years later. Actually, speak of 4 years later, there was one point around 2015 when Future Bass got so incredibly popular, or no, it wasn't popular, but it got so common on the label, like every 3 songs or so was Future Bass, that people started making all the memes in the world about it. I think the album 023 Voyage, so that's like a third of the album is Future Bass. Though at the time I can't really blame the amount of Future Bass that was coming out around that time, because Future Bass was really cool when it started out. I mean, have you seen what Future Bass looks like in 2014? Yeah, you know, stuff like Kaleidoscope and Orbit. Those are really good. Actually, if you go even further back, something like Perfect Views by Rogue. I think, was it Red Hawk or something? Gave a very good description of it. He basically said that it was like hearing a song from 2015 or 2016, but it actually came out in 2013. So in a way, it's kind of like the opposite of We Are by Rich Edwards. But as you can see with Future Bass, I end up using the same color for the hair the whole way as the visualizer. And then that leads to a few issues here on the front where I'm trying to make the visualizer stand out against the hair, but that is really difficult to do, and right now I still can't really be satisfied that I actually managed to do that, but I could have been a lot worse as well. So now going over the hair itself is, you know, the same kind of deal as it always is, at least on the head anyway. Doing it on the front, sometimes there's a bit of variation, but it's usually not really much to deal with. But then on the front, I end up going back and forth on here a couple of times, because getting hair on the front that is horizontally shaded, I've gone on about this before. I think when I went on about it, yeah, in the first video, the one where I remade the Sunshine After the Rain skins, I went on about that in the last skin, so you can see that here again, but in this case I actually didn't take too long doing the front hair. Then doing these little details around the shorts is fine again, but I do get a bit annoyed when I keep forgetting to turn on mirroring across limbs, or forgetting to turn it off in some cases. So I end up having to shade things twice when I really shouldn't have had to do that. But it really isn't that big of a deal. Things just come together very quickly, and we finish the remake of, well, whatever it was called. Oh yeah, Future! Next up is a genre that's sort of related to Future Bass, but it's also very distinct in its own ways. It's a lot grittier and a lot darker. That's right, it's Trap. I think I called the skin something like Drop It Hard, because Trap is a bit like Electro House in that it always has the vocal chop right before the drop. That's not really always true, but it is sometimes. But coming back to the genre again, Trap is often seen as like related to Future Bass because it uses the same kind of beat as Future Bass, but its aesthetic is completely different. Trap is very dark, very urban. It often gets quite gritty. I wouldn't describe it as being quite as brutal as dubstep though. Now Trap has the potential to get very intense with like hybrid trap and hard trap, which like make the synths and the bass, did I get the order right? No, the bass and the synths really distorted respectively. But pure trap and even festival trap doesn't really do that. Like, make trap more intense, you're just like upping the bass, which just means the bass overpowers everything else. But it doesn't really make it sound harsher, if you know what I mean. Not that trap really needs to sound harsher, it's already quite gritty and intense. Melodic trap does exist though, and that's one of the things that makes it so hard to explain the difference between future bass and trap, is the existence of genres like love trap and heaven trap, which can be very similar to future bass at times. I think I can generally tell love trap apart, but heaven trap can be really, really difficult. It's mostly in the rhythm. Did I have any difficulties making this skin? Yes, I did. You're about to see me spend a long time at that hair. Currently, we're doing the bit on the top, which, you know, is just kind of curly, which is easy enough. I've done that many times, although I did have to keep cross-referencing with several different skins to see if I was, you know, being consistent and doing a pattern that actually looks good. And then, moving on to the front, then I did the color of the dark red visualizer, which is of course the color that Monstercat uses for trap. But you'll see here with this pattern, I really struggled to find a good pattern for quite a while at the front. In fact, I think I'll come back to it at the end to finalize the pattern. Although I do take a little bit of time doing this part at the back and sides as well. It's supposed to look like basically that it's extremely thin and therefore you can sort of see the skin under it. So that's why it's between the color of the hair and the color of the skin. By skin, I mean like the actual skin of the skin. I don't mean like the texture file. And then moving on from there, it's the usual kind of stuff. So I'm coloring in the eyes, which is fine. But then I get back to the front of the hair and then I try that pattern and now things start to look a lot better. And I finish off my remake of Drop It Hard. And I think it turned out very well. Moving on, we now have actually two skins, which you could argue are for the same genre, but you could also argue they're for different genres. And that is for indie dance and new disco, which were particularly popular in the middle years of Monstercat. So that'd be stuff like 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017. This genre, both indie dance and new disco, tend to have a very summer sort of theme going on with them. Even though the lyrics can actually be quite dark. I mean, you know, Watching by Summer Was Fun. Probably some other songs by Summer Was Fun. They really love to use like bright, happy, summery synths. And then they have a lyrics about a stalker. So, yeah, indie dance can kind of deceive you like that. New disco is a little different. It's more just, you know, stereotypical lyrics, really. But this skin, as you can see, it doesn't look like I'd have much trouble doing it. And to be honest, I didn't really have that much issue actually just making this skin. But let me tell you, I had to go back over this thing like 5 different times because I missed out these little tiny details each time. And it honestly got so ridiculous at points that like I basically ended up deleting some of my recordings so I could record myself doing all of them together. And when I did that, I managed to forget to fix one of the things that I had already fixed, which, you know, really wasn't making my day very happy. It also didn't help that I was actually midway through making the next skin, which is the male version of the skin I'm doing currently, that I actually noticed some of these errors. So as you can see right now, things are going quite well. And again, as I mentioned, making the skin itself goes fine. It's just trying to record it and making sure that you get every detail done in that recording can be quite annoying, especially when you keep missing out tiny details. But you know, missing details on the front isn't really an issue. Sometimes I miss the tops of the shoulders, and I mean the parts of the shoulders that are exposed. Like that happens like 1 in every 10 skins, and it can be quite annoying because like you go to all the effort of making the skin and then you upload it, and then only after you've already uploaded you realize, oh wait, there's something really wrong with this. It's really quite a shame. You can see things changed there, and that wasn't actually me forgetting anything. That was just like something weird happened with my software. I think what happened is I opened like a weird window or something, and then I had to like get rid of that. So I decided to stop recording, but then the rest of the skin goes well, and there we are. With Indie Dance out of the way, we now move on to its sister, or in this case rather, brother genre, New Disco. New Disco is quite similar to Indie Dance, but it also has its own quirks. Although I'll definitely admit I've had big difficulty telling apart Indie Dance from New Disco in the past. Songs like Hang Up by World and Chase It, which actually is also by World, I've kind of found those hard to classify as either Indie Dance or New Disco. And I guess, you know, this kind of stuff isn't really that important. But, you know, I'm just kind of into those random details. Similar to how I'm changing a few details here that don't really matter that much, but I tend to just do them for male skins. In that I always move down shoes and I lower the waistline slightly. It really doesn't matter that much, but I decide to do that just as a slight little distinguishing factor between boys and girls. But then, you know, everything else is the same, so it goes together quickly. Now the final skin in this video isn't really for a genre, it's more just a label that Monstercat uses whenever they find it too difficult to classify a particular song into 1 or 2 specific genres. The label they use for that is electronic because it's technically correct. I mean, every song, well, not every song, but like most songs on Monstercat are EDM, and as a result, when they can't figure out the genre exactly, they can always just label it electronic, and it's technically not wrong. So I think that's what's going on there. The electronic visualizer is a light grey color, so the skin has very little color to it. I even made the eyes grey, as you can see there. I used the same hair dye effect that I did in the dubstep and hard dance skin. You'll see that again in a moment when I get back to the head. Right now I'm just doing the shoes and the shorts, which goes on fine. So then, shading most parts, that's fine. Not really a whole lot to talk about here. Electronic, the descriptor is a little overused at times. Like, there are a lot of cases where electronic is used and it really can't be excused because a lot of the time it's just for, I don't know, synthwave or breakbeat or something else like that. Some like niche-ish genre that isn't quite as common, but it's definitely its own thing, and it's not like it's truly difficult to classify. Like, say, Queen of Your Heart, or what's another good example? Pressure by Draper. But yeah, most of the skin is not too bad. Even shading the hair, I mean, it's the same kind of pattern as you always do. So I got the black first, then I'll do the darker grey, or do I do the lighter grey first? I can't remember. I go back and forth a few times there, just figuring out what's going on. And then I get on to the lighter grey, which I realize actually kind of looks like a teenage version of Tokyo Machine. If any of you get what I'm talking about here, just with the hair color. Later on, outside of this clip, I end up redoing that front hair a little bit. I don't change the pattern at all, I just make the shades of grey like just slightly more distinct so it doesn't look quite as dull. But overall, this skin is simple enough really. There's just the hair dye effect and everything else is really as simple as it gets. Apart from the shorts and the socks, I guess. You could technically make that simpler by giving it long pants, but you know what I mean. With the skins finished, it's time as always to compare the old and new side by side. Can you see a big difference? I can anyway. We're now finished remaking the Monstercat genres, so in the next video we'll move straight on past the 7 Seas contest entry onto by design and the 3 skins after. If that's something you want to see, subscribe by clicking on your left and enable notifications by clicking the bell. Please also hit the like button down below if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching and have a good night or day.